Hello, in today's video, I'm going to be giving a book review of Finding Your Unicorn Space by Eve Rodsky, which is a follow-up book to her New York Times bestseller, Fair Play. I'm a Fair Play facilitator. I've been trained by them to help couples facilitate those conversations. I'm a coach for men to better understand invisible labor. So one of the reasons I really wanted to make this book review is I'm starting a book club. This is June 2025. Next week, we're going to be kicking off a book club around unicorn space, and a lot of the spouses of the men that I work with are going to be in there. So I wanted to give an overview of it, people a high level overview, see if they might want to join that book club, as well as I know people are going to be watching this for years to come. And I think it's a really good book, and it helped me reframe a lot of the way that I see even my own life as a man, even though I know it is much more catered towards a woman and or mom audience. So we'll start off with that unicorn space was introduced in her Fair Play book. A lot of what she talks about is dividing up the domestic labor in the home. And one of those things needs to be like one of the things we really need to make sure there's time for is unicorn space. She touches on this in Fair Play, but she really goes in on this one. And what is unicorn space? Let's start there. So, the active and open pursuit of self expression in any form which requires value based curiosity and purposeful sharing of this pursuit with the world. Like the mythical equine that inspired the name, it doesn't exist until you give yourself permission to reclaim, discover, and nurture the natural gifts and interests that make you you. Now, I know that a lot of the examples she gives in this book are of women that are trying to reclaim this for themselves, especially because a lot of men typically are doing more of these things and don't necessarily need nearly as much of a push because there's a lot of weight that we're going to go through that has women much more bound to their home responsibilities, or as she says, the three P's and notes here: parenting and profession. So those are the three things that often are holding people down, really anyone, but especially moms, from able to dive into the unicorn space. So let's start with chapter one. Um, Unleash unicorn, embracing the power of pause to commit to creativity. We start off with the unicorn space definition and also like the other definition. So some of the things that it's not a hobby, it's not a vanity project. I had never heard of that term before, but it's not superfluous. It's not nice to have. It's not a thing that we do kind of casually. It's something that we care about. And it's not a distraction from things. Oftentimes, the distractions that we do have in our life are a distraction from our unicorn space, from something that is really calling for us. I think the thesis of why it's so important is that it creates resilience, it defeats and or fights burnout. And when the storms in life, she references this metaphor quite a bit, when the storms in life come, this helps us weather the storm is when we have unicorn space. When we're not in our unicorn space, when we're not making time for this, it's much harder to weather those storms. She wrote this book and consistently references the middle of the pandemic was a part of when she was writing this book. So that was a huge storm, and what this was needed more than ever. And so I think a lot of the women that she spoke with really were able to find resilience because they were plugged into you. Some of the things I really love this quiz early on, which are the main things that it gets confused with. I think the first thing that Unicorn Space gets confused with is self care. So it is not self care. It's not, exercise. It's not going to yoga. It's not trying to eat healthier. Second one, it's not adult friendships. So yes, it is good to go out with your friends, have lunch, have a good time. That is also not unicorn space. You can certainly share it with your friends, your unicorn space, but that is also not it. And it's not date night. Going out with your spouse is not unicorn space. So what is unicorn space? Again, it's value-based curiosity. So we're going to dive into it because the book is not unicorn space. It's called Finding Your Unicorn Space. So that is half the battle. It's sort of, I think so many of us struggle to have it. I bet when they were having those discussions about the book cover, debating whether it should just be unicorn space or finding it, I see why they chose that title, because I have had to go through this myself. Alyssa, my wife, is going through it and consistently goes through it. I think a lot of the readers and a lot of the people in my community consistently struggle with, well, what is my unicorn space? And finding it is the journey. It's going to be an ongoing, forever, consistent journey. So again, in that first chapter, she gives the definition of what it is, what it isn't, what it commonly gets confused with, and a handful of really good examples of awesome women, really cool stories of what they're creating for their unicorn space. For anyone that's wondering, I have poison ivy, so if you're seeing the pink on my arm, that's one thing on my to-do list. Um, So in chapter 2, she really dives into what are the toxic time messages that keep showing up around unicorn space. Now, in the Fair Play book, she talks significantly about toxic time messages. These are a new set of messages that women are definitely hearing on a consistent basis, and she has sort of go along with each of them. So, number one, I have less time than ever, especially while she was writing this during the pandemic. I don't have time for my own needs. Um, this is just I have to spend time to make one more thing on my to-do list, like it's adding to my to-do list. How can I prioritize this when it feels like the world is burning around me? It's okay, so why make the time? Why is that important? And then, like, there's always something that kind of, even when I go to do the thing, and I even really need creative time for myself. So some of the main, she gives a couple different responses, but a huge part of it is that it actually creates good health. A lot of the people that are plugged into these things are more resilient. They are more healthy because they're consistently being in a creative space. And importance for relationship longevity. So when people are both in their unicorn spaces, they're much more likely to be able to thrive and be together for long term versus if one person is burning out and the other person is in the unicorn space, that's not going to go well. And she sets us up pretty well to go into chapter 3, talking about how to go about thinking of what success looks like within unicorn space, and going to the 3C's: curiosity, connection, and completion. And last piece of this is when we're not doing these things, we're often turning into burnout, opt out, anxiety, and depression. So if those are things that you are dealing with, that is part of her, what I'm looking for. That is part of her antidote, is unicorn space for burnout, opt out, anxiety, and depression. Now, fast forwarding chapter 3, identify yourself, how to rethink success and redefine what matters to you. This is where she outlines those 3Ps: parent, partnership, and professional. So this is where we consistently show what success is. Oh, do you have a partner? Oh, do you have a profession? How are your kids showing up? And so constantly when we feel like we're nailing it in these 3Ps, we've been told for in so many places that that is what success is. And so when we are nailing it in those 3 areas, there's a good chance we're also failing in unicorn space. And so she's encouraging us to redefine what success looks like and not just looking at those 3Ps. She said there's 2 main people that we often see of as she would call them. One is the resigned dreamer, grateful for who I am, but really just shouldn't ask for more. Probably someone that is doing okay or pretty good in the 3Ps. And the breakout star, which she says, if you're reading this book, you're probably that. Probably if you're reading this, if you're watching this video, this is probably you too, as you fantasize about breaking out. And so a huge part of what she says is if we're not doing these things, we're losing ourself. And so she really puts like a firm on like what yours is, and she turned it into an acronym. So you're losing you and the yourself. Relationship satisfaction is probably what you're losing. Sanity and mental health, emotional longevity, loss, sense of identity, finances, and finding your community. So if you are not going after your unicorn space, these are a bunch of pieces of yourself that you're likely losing right now. So this again helps us rethink what success looks like when it comes to our general life and why unicorn space plays an important part in that. Now, this fast forwards us to part 2 of the book, The Rules of Permission, chapter 4, 5, and 6. So, permission to be unavailable, permission to burn your guilt and shame, and permission to use your voice. Permission to be unavailable. I think this fights that toxic time message and/or this general message, especially for moms and women, that they can't like take away from their kids, that they can't be unavailable for the home. And she said that if you're going to be able to say no, you need to be able to do that. So the subcontext was how to find your flow and start saying no. And she shares the story of how she initially was having a really hard time just setting a boundary. 2 hours on a Sunday, she was uninterruptible, and people kept coming to her door. And it took a lot for her to be able to let that happen, to say no and create really firm boundaries around that. Second one, permission to burn your guilt and shame, how to carve out free headspace for creativity. She talked about how she went through a small ritual. She wrote out some things on a paper about her guilt and shame, and then she burned it. And so she encourages you to do some similar things, but really examine what is the guilt and shame, what is the underlying value underneath it, and by going into your unicorn space and being willing to get past your guilt and shame, is it possible that you'll actually end up fulfilling on those areas that guilt and shame was sparking up front? And then the third one, permission to use your voice, chapter 6, how to ask for creative time you require. She encourages and gives a lot of great stories of women that really kind of asking for time and space to use their voices and to ask for what they needed and permission to do that, which you don't need her permission, you don't need mine, you need to give it to yourself. And then part 3, we talk about cultivate the 3 C's of creativity, curiosity, connection, and completion. So first one is just identifying your curiosity, how value-based curiosity can lead you to your unicorn space. I know for me, the way that often looked is what are the things that show up in my home or that I find any kind of interest in. I think you could look at the music that you listen to, the activities that you end up putting time into. So you get a lot of great stories about how people are going about that, and were some of the huge wins that people were able to do. And then she really encourages you to set a goal. The goal is not to finish necessarily, but to get started. So I would say similar when I'm working with new content creators or people that are trying to get started on social media, oftentimes what I'm saying is, when will you open up the camera? When will you shoot the first video? If I'm on the call with them, I'll encourage them to complete the whole first video on the call with me. So I think setting a goal that is not our traditional sense of goals, in that like there's a certain amount of followers, it's just like getting started on the thing. It's the taking specific intentional action. Um, Chapter 9 and 10 is the connection. Share it with the world and face your fears. So use your unicorn space to connect to your community. She said a huge part of why people find so much value in unicorn space is their connections with the community around them, is that they find so many people that light them up and improve the way that they're having conversations and bring them identity and bring them self-fulfillment by being able to contribute to the community around them. And then connect to others in a ready, set, go mindset. Similarly, facing your fears, setting about what you're trying to do with your unicorn space, and encouraging you to reach out to the people in and around you. And I was also a big fan of, in chapter 9, she shares a couple of different ways that people go about sharing with their communities, and recognizing that these, by being able to categorize these things, we're much better able to define how we're going about connecting with each other. So she talks about the accountability share, the serendipitous community share. So accountability share is like, hey, I'm doing this thing, I'm encouraging people to hold me accountable, or just like I'm putting it out there. The and support share, kind of like they're just sharing that they're showing up. I see this in my community of men all the time. Hey, I'm getting back into my modules today. I'm showing up today, and I haven't been present for a couple months. The serendipitous community share sort of was kind of a thing that I feel like y'all would appreciate. Slay it forward share. This one confused me a little bit, but it seemed like when you are doing it really well, or you're like sharing a win almost, you're also encouraging other people to win along with you. Showcase is if you feel really good about something that you've done. It's here's what I've accomplished. The soft share is taking someone else's good work. This one confused me a little bit too. When I confuse like this definition, I get some of them confused. But the spin-off share being something that you see someone else doing well, and then you're kind of what they're doing. And then the service share is finding a way to give service, give appreciation, contribute to somebody else that's also sharing what you're passionate about. And then on to our last section is completion. So enlisting your partner, I would say chapter 11 is probably going to be a huge part for a lot of people. I know specifically for a lot of families that I work with that are trying to improve those conversations that they're having with their partner, enlisting your partner in having them be a person that's a champion for you. That I know can be really challenging for people, especially if lost trust over the years, where they're not a supportive person around something, anything they've been doing. I know for sure I've had moments where I watch Alyssa start something and maybe not finish it. And then definitely moments where I've had to put aside my pessimism to be able to show up for her And I need to regulate my own emotions so that I'm not projecting those past onto her that I know she's had to take a significant amount of action to break past in herself. And for me, I know that she's seen me start things, and she'll have a moment of being like, "Yeah," and I know that she's doing a lot of emotional regulating over there, so that she's not being a wet blanket on my parade. And so, last one is continue the pursuit. Why complete is better than perfect, and man, that might as well be my middle name. If you guys have found me originally via Instagram, you'll see that mostly all of my videos are imperfect, and I fully embrace the idea of completion. I wore the shirt for this video. I give you permission to fail because I think there's so many moments when we think failure is that the result of the thing was the failure rather than I think failure is when we don't do it. And so it's kind of shifting how we think about what failure is. I think for so many people, oh, I posted a video, it didn't do well, feels like the failure to them, versus that's a huge win I would see. Um, I encourage people to really look at just completing it. That is the win in itself, and it's a contextual change. So I recommend this book if you are someone that is consistently burning out, if you're someone that is consistently trying to tap into something. I know she talked about in chapter 4, I believe, of Fair Play. She says permission to be interesting. She talks about how a lot of moms get really plugged into domestic labor, a lot of the mental load around the home, and then they stop giving themselves permission to be interesting. Not my words; those are her words. And so unicorn space, finding your unicorn space, I think is a great trajectory. It's a great journey for getting past that. So if this is an interesting book to you, if you want to learn more about it, certainly get a copy. I'm link in the notes here. If you are looking for someone to help you stay accountable for this, we are going to be doing one above starting Thursday for anyone that's seeing this in real time. And if you are someone that's seeing this after, say, hey, I have a bunch of people that would love to have a group experience of this, reach out to me. I anticipate calling this one out. I don't know if it'll actually happen, but I anticipate that the people that do register for the club, that will eventually be just a long-term Zoom link where people show up every week and talk about their unicorn space, but it'll have started as a book club. So I'm kind of hoping that happens. I think it'll be really valuable, especially for the women, with the men in my community. Yeah. I'll say is if you're not plugged into my content or my community, I would encourage you to join the Mental Load Basics community where we're talking about generally things like this, domestic labor, relationships. If you want to be plugged into deals, offers, things that I have going on, opportunities, and or I'm betting by 2026, 2027, there will be a book. We're in proposal mode in June 2025. We will be doing more work around this. Hope this is valuable. Thank you for watching.